Just to recall, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss vulnerabilities of digital farming, discussing costs, present a number of key studies, both from the project, but also from from outside the project. And that's why I'm grateful to have Angelica Mona for MIT, and also Mike from University of Ljubljana, and Nina from the FAO, based in International United Nations Agency based in Rome, plus, of course, as always in these occasions, Professor Brunori, who will actually provide a much more detailed assessment of this question as regards to the CODES project. So I will be just leaving the floor to Merve to start the proceedings, just to highlight that this is a very timely discussions, because also we are going to have the CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, is being drastically reviewed at the moment, and the issues of security, the trade-offs that are required, the investments that might be needed, that can be done by public policy, but also what can be done by private actors, private operators, farming operators, is something that is very much to the fore, and therefore is something that makes a quite timely discussion today. So without further ado, I will leave to our project manager from.
Thank you, Serafin, for opening the session and for the introduction. So, hello everyone, I'm Arvinda Boishier, and as Serafin was mentioning, I'm the project manager of Codex in ADL, and today I will be presenting the sessions and the speakers that will be presenting. So to begin today's session, we're going to have an overview of the cybersecurity landscape in agriculture. And to do so, our first speaker is Angelica Marotta, who is a cybersecurity researcher at MIT, and her work spans from AI, big data, cyber insurance, and risk management. And today she will be presenting some research insights into how cybersecurity is shaping. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Share the slides. So can you all see them?
Yes. Yes.
Great, great. So thank you so much for having me. So good morning, everyone. My name is Angelica Marotta. I'm a researcher on cybersecurity at MIT Sloan, and I focus on the intersection of cybersecurity, compliance, and regulation, especially in sectors where digital transformation is reshaping traditional practices faster than security systems can adapt. So cybersecurity is no longer just a technical issue, it's systemic, and it shapes trust, resilience, continuity of everyday life. And agriculture is becoming one of the most affected sectors. And it is especially associated with critical infrastructure sectors such as energy, healthcare, transportation. But what is making me particularly alarming is that if something as essential and traditionally low-tech as agriculture, farming, is becoming a cyber target, that tells us something profound about how far the digital shift has gone and how much is at stake if we don't secure it. So I'd like to give you an overview of this particular topic. So there is an important question that we need to ask ourselves. So even if agriculture is now digital and vulnerable, how many risks are we underestimating? So the short answer is that more than we think, because today agriculture is ranked as the 7th most targeted industry for ransomware attack, which is becoming an important number. And if we think, for example, about the GPS attack, you may have heard of this. So it was a 11 million ransomware attack that targeted this Brazilian-based meat processing company, which experienced this big attack. and which disrupted meat supplies across several countries, such as the United States, Canada, Australia. So, and this was a very important attack, which was also associated and compared to the Colonial Pipeline attack, which was another major ransomware attack, which targeted the fuel pipeline system in the United States and affected transporting gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel across the East Coast. And it demonstrated the broader risk to the national infrastructure. And the same thing applied to the GBS company. And another attack was, for example, the Dole ransomware attack. So the 10.5 million cyber attack on this company, which temporarily halted fruit and vegetable supplies across North America. So all these attacks involved ransomware. And this pointed to threats that involve, for example, data, so personal data. In the attack to Dole, for example, the company confirmed a breach affecting around 4,000 United States employees. So these incidents, when happened, they disrupt entire systems, and the consequences ripple out fast. And they are not just financial consequences, but they are also there are also losses in production, production delays, animal welfare, and food supply disruptions, and so on. So there are many consequences which also involve other issues that you may not think about, such as regulatory risk. So we mentioned regulatory risk, but what does it mean? So often regulatory risk is not a priority in companies because they think about security and technology. But when they come to assess compliance within their environment, the company environment, there are often many issues. But where is promising in this current compliance and regulatory environment is that governments are trying to respond to these alarming threats, especially in agriculture. So in the United States, there's a recent legislation called the Farm and Food Cybersecurity Act of 2025, which is an innovative piece of legislation which was introduced in response to the growing wave of cyber attacks targeting the agriculture and food sector, and highlighted by high-profile incidents such as those that we mentioned. The GBS and Dole were examples. And so these sectors have become more digitized, as we've seen, and with automation, Internet of Things, and precision agriculture. And but they're also increasingly vulnerable. And these regulations are trying to bridge the gap that are currently existing in the security landscape in this sector. So this bill is meant to ensure proactive federal oversight and preparedness. And it is a clear sign that agriculture is being recognized as a critical infrastructure sector, which is a promising sign. And so what does it involve? Well, it involves that there are, it mandates cybersecurity assessments, simulations, and minimum security standards for agricultural technology. So it is very important for companies that are not mature enough to set compliance and security measures themselves. And it also has some very important requirements about reporting cyber incidents. And this piece of legislation also aligns with the CISA, so the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency agriculture guidelines. So it's very important for companies that wants to to have risk management frameworks set up in a proper way. And also in moving to the European regulations landscape, we have an important piece of legislation, the NIS2 directive, which is along with the Cyber Resilience Act and GDPR, constitute important points of reference for agriculture, especially for the incident reporting for what's concerning GDPR, and also for Cyber Resilience Act. It's very important for smart farming equipment, IoT devices used in agriculture, and but more than developing new rules in this field, what's important and also the real challenge now isn't just creating these new rules. It's about harmonizing them. So across large multinational agribusinesses and small and medium farms, startups, and vendors providing the tech and regulators themselves. So we need to create this kind of network to harmonize and make all these regulations and best practices more comprehensive and make them catching up with what's happening in the field. So I would like to bring this to a human level. We have talked about big tech, big companies being targeted by cyber attacks, but I want you to show that this can happen to even to small farms, which is more targeted to everyday life of the agriculture players and stakeholders at the moment. So there's this story about this farm in Switzerland where a ransomware attack paralyzed small farms and automated milking system. So it wasn't a high-tech facility or part of a large chain. It was just a local farm that had invested in automation technology just to keep up with modern production demands. So when the system failed because of this attack, consequences were immediate and somewhat tragic, because the cows in the farm couldn't be milked, the farmer couldn't operate, there was disruption, and also one pregnant cow died from the consequences of this disruption because the farmer couldn't monitor the cow's vital parameters. And so the ransomware demanded $10,000, which is a relatively small amount, but enough to push that farmer to the edge of shutting down. So what does this story remind us? So it reminds us that cyber attacks in agriculture aren't just economic, or they affect animals, they affect food safety, communities, families. And this is why we can treat this issue just like another line in the IT security report. So what we can learn from these incidents, both the big incidents affecting big companies or the local farms. Well, when we zoom out from these incidents, a few clear lessons emerge. So the first one is that no one is too small to be targeted. So small farms are often seen as low risk or not very vulnerable, but attackers now know that they lack security resources, and they are likely to pay quickly to resume operations. And the other lesson is that automation can create fragility. So if it's not built on secure foundations, they may be vulnerable. And so also, if the digital systems fail, there are not often manual backups in place. So another lesson, for example, is also that generic information in technology, security advice, so generic advice that are often in cybersecurity may not be adapted to agriculture because it is a unique field. And for example, a milking robot or an autonomous tractor isn't a laptop. So you need to have unique, adapt the best practices to the unique needs of this field and the unique risks, especially. And finally, collaboration matters. So we need better channels for threat intelligence sharing and between farmers, researchers, tech providers, policymakers. And we go back to the previous topic about harmonizing. So harmonizing is fundamental, and collaboration is a very important component of harmonizing. So I'd like to leave you with this quote because I think this summarizes the main future direction in this field. Because as automation, artificial intelligence become more embedded in agriculture, understanding and evaluating cyber risk becomes not only more urgent, but also significantly more complex. So yeah, it's the first essential step towards meaningful protection. So assessing risk is very important, but it's notoriously challenging for companies, even for other sectors. So and agriculture relies on a patchwork of legacy systems, third-party technologies, and increasingly connected devices. So it's very important to make it accessible and easier to identify where the real vulnerabilities lies in this sector. So the complexity of farming operations and agriculture technologies are combined with limited information technology resources and growing digitalization need to be a priority for assessing risk in this field. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and I would like to thank you so much for having me. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions about these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angelica, for that insightful presentation. So we will have some time at the end of all the presentations to review if you have any questions. So it's really clear from your presentation that the complexity of cybersecurity and the governance of cybersecurity has a real impact on how digitalization of agriculture will move forward in the future. So now we will hear from Professor Gianluca Brunori, who is the coordinator of Codex and also the full professor of food policy at the University of Pisa. So Gianluca has over 30 years of experience in agricultural economics, rural sociology, and food policy. And today he will zoom in on the challenges emerging from the Codex project in terms of cybersecurity. Gianluca, over to you.
Thank you very much, Marvel, and thank you, Angelica, for your insightful presentation. Very, very interesting. Yes, we can start from the digital utopia, which we're facing at this moment on agriculture. We dream of an agriculture full of sensors where everything is monitored and we can, let's say, predict any variables and what is happening in the agricultural field. And to do this, we need to create a kind of connected farmers, full of devices, software, sensors, databases, people, but connected with infrastructures, etc. So since the beginning of our project, and even before with Desira, we tried to highlight that digitalization in general, but in particular in agriculture, has also or might have also, let's say, a dark side, or let's say they might provide risks. But to tell the truth, on the beginning, we didn't think much to cybersecurity. But with the recent events, we are talking a lot, for example, of satellites, and we understand now that satellites are, let's say, an arena for struggle, for competition between geopolitical giants. And easily in a situation like this, which is not very peaceful at the moment, the satellite system could be disrupted for several reasons. So we have to consider scenarios that in the past were not considered at all, or were considered really very, very unlikely, to consider them into our analysis. With Codex, we have adopted a systemic approach, a multidimensional view, because in our view, costs of digitalization are not just economic, which are very important, by the way, but also social and environmental. So what we can say in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of the multidimensional costs of cybersecurity, Angelica has already shown that there is a multidimensionality of the costs and the risks related to cybersecurity. But we can try to create a kind of taxonomy, also to be able to implement methods to assessing costs and benefits. We have to start with direct cost to let's say, to anticipate risks, for example, technology, infrastructure investments, staff and training, compliance and certification, insurance. So this direct costs add up to the costs of, let's say, buying an equipment or adopting digital solutions. But we, of course, have indirect costs related to the potential damages that cyber attack can have. And Angelica has already shown the magnitude of this potential. Let's think, for example, a vertical farming. Everything is controlled to computer systems. If these computer systems are hacked, we can lose the whole production. But at the same time, there is dangers of data loss and breach, reputation and market effects. So we really have to explore the potential damages that in terms of economic. But in terms of social costs, I think it is important to highlight the relevance on food security. When thousands of chicken, for example, are killed by a cyber attack, what are the implications for food security? And in terms of rural livelihoods, but at the same time, if we consider the social aspects related to farming, what is the effect on the stress on farmers, or the loss on trust on digital technologies? But at the same time, this might provide kind of a tendency to reduce the openness and data sharing, because and we know that data sharing is very important to progress, because data are really the fuel of the digital economy. But if farmers are not willing to share data because of the risk of cybersecurity, we might have a kind of slowdown of the process of benefits that digitalization can provide. But all in all, in terms of social cost, we have to consider the effect on the digital device. So those who are able to pay this cost and anticipate the risk of cybersecurity, and those who are not. So an increasing divide could be generated by cybersecurity risks. But also we have environmental cost. For example, first of all, material and energy footprint of cybersecurity systems. They add to the already let's say, existing footprint of digitalization. But for example, the environmental cost of cyber incidents in agriculture, if, for example, all the spraying devices are controlled by electronic device, what happens if these systems are hacked? So it would be possible that to poison the soil, the plants, etc. So we have to take this risk seriously. We can consider also indirect and systemic environmental costs related to, for example, pollution or other aspects. But at the same time, in some cases, we will have some trade-offs. So between environmental security and economic costs, etc. So this will help, generate some reflections, some questions related to how to address properly the issues of digitalization. Also, in terms of environmental costs, reduced openness to data sharing might limit the capacity of the digital systems to respond to sustainability monitoring and environmental and monitoring and prediction. So just to get to the conclusions, in Codex, we have highlighted the importance of to address all levels of the systems, not only business process, so we have to consider the costs at business level, but we stress strongly the importance of building conducive digital ecosystems. And cybersecurity can do a lot in this regard. Digital ecosystems can do a lot with cybersecurity. And of course, we have to consider all these aspects at the socio-ecological system level. So main messages for us is that first of all, digitalization cannot be left to market forces alone and to regulation alone. Regulation is very important, but we need policies and strategies. So we need really strategies at territorial and national level. And there is a need of a strong level of public investments in security. And this is a message related to researchers, and a sound risk assessment is needed. So with this, I would like to thank you and to pass the floor to Merveille. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gianluca, for this great presentation on how cybersecurity is really connected to the real-world challenges for both farmers and policymakers. So now I will give the floor to our next speaker, who is Mai Vilfan, who is a cybersecurity researcher and PhD student at the University of Ljubljana. So his work focuses on cybersecurity in critical infrastructure, and he has interest in 5G and digital threats. So Mai will dive into open data agriculture and explore both the opportunities for innovation and transparency. Please, Mai, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so today I'm going to present a topic which is very interesting because the majority of us don't really think about it, and that's open data. Now, the second that we open up a business, and agriculture is business, we're going to generate data which is going to be open, so data which we want to be public. But a lot of times, because of bad business practices, bad data sharing practices, a lot of data also becomes open and we don't know about it. And this is also the first step in every cyber attack. gathering data that we can find on any sort of institution. Now, in technical terms, this is called open source intelligence, or OSINT. So open source intelligence represents all publicly available data that can be gathered using non-intrusive methods. So that means that we aren't allowed to hack let's say, an individual, a certain business, or a certain system, but we are allowed to gather information that is publicly open. And this also means that we can use tools which have been designed to find this open data and use it to our advantage. Anytime a cyber attack is going to happen, attackers will usually want to gather intelligence first. So this is the same principle as military. So first is a reconnaissance, and after the reconnaissance phase is done, you can start doing an actual attack. Now, with the rise of agricultural digitalization, this means that more and more data that is connected to agriculture becomes publicly accessible. Now, this can range from personal data, so data about individuals, their families, social media profiles, and so on. Technical data, so what type of devices are they using, what type of seeds are they buying, what type of pesticides are they buying, and so on. And also business information. So imagine finding an invoice online. You can know how much a certain company is willing to pay for a certain product. So if the opposition or a cyber attacker gets this data, he can use this to manipulate the market. So with this rising problem of open source information, we need some mechanisms to control it and to understand the fact that this can be a huge problem. So I created a couple of demos. So the first picture on the left, this is a web server that I got via Shodan. So Shodan is an open source website that catalogs all open devices that can be seen on the internet. So in this case, this is a web server that belongs to Kelly Solutions. So Kelly Solutions is a provider in America that sells pesticides. And this is totally public information. I can see the IP addressing, I can see to which company this server belongs to, what type of operating system it runs, which ports are active. And all this is open data. I didn't do anything illegal to get it. I just went to Google, I typed in Shodan, and I searched for farm equipment. So you can look at farm equipment or servers and so on. And on the right side, you can see an example for a Slovenian domain. So a Slovenian farm which sells its produce. So the domain is called prikmeto.si, and I wanted to get some open source intelligence about it. This took me roughly 2 minutes. So I used a tool called Certificate Show, which lists all the certificates which belong to a certain domain. And I found this domain which is called webdisk.prikmeto.si. And I tried it. I tried to Google the domain, and what did I get? A login form. So a login form probably for a web disk. So all I had to do now is try a username and a password. So up until this point, nothing I've done is illegal. All this is completely legal, and every one of you can also try it. Now, one of the most influential attacks here was the John Deere OSINT attack. So in the year 2021, a security researcher named Sig Codes used only OSINT techniques to uncover vulnerabilities in John Deere's agricultural software and equipment. Meaning, there was no hacking involved, he just Googled all the information that he wanted to see. So what was the data that was actually exposed? User accounts, meaning usernames and passwords. He got this information just by Googling the correct terms. Farm equipment data. So farm equipment data can be a huge problem because usually we measure the amortization rate. So if a piece of equipment is old, it means that we'll probably slowly have to replace it. If this information gets out, the provider that we want to buy the equipment from can raise our prices because he knows we will have to buy new equipment. and also remotely controlled tractors. So he gathered data and also then managed to conduct an attack to gain access to the remotely controlled tractors. And so the researcher relied solely on publicly available data. So there was no hacking, no illegal means necessary. Just data that John Deere had publicly available. And the funny thing here is that this prompted the annual John Deere Cyber Tractor Challenge. So each year, John Deere has a challenge to see if, to sort of bring to light the cybersecurity issues and problems that the agricultural sector faces, and the young talent which will be there to fix these issues and provide solutions. Now, why does this matter? Well, agriculture is a system that is slowly beginning to digitalize, and agricultural systems usually use a combination of open and semi-public data. So one of the aspects that we can look at is cyber attacks, meaning, yes, we can use all this data to then conduct a cyber attack. Be it a phishing email to gain personal access to computers, maybe a distributed denial of service attack, or so on. But we also have to understand that all this open data can be exploited for market manipulation or price manipulation. And we can also conduct unfair business practices. So this can really create a problem from a technical standpoint and from a non-technical standpoint. Now, one of the things that happens when we can see how much open data is there is that bad business practices come to light. So you can also think for yourself, how many of you use private drive links to share information? So business information, not just your personal things. And I've got, there are two examples. So the picture on the left, on the bottom left, is a simple Google dork. So those of you who don't know, Google dorking is a mechanism of using Google with additional parameters which can help us gather a lot of specific information. So what did I try to do? In the first example, I looked at drive.google.com. So I wanted to get all the drive links, and I searched for the term farm in the URL. And what did I get? A Google Drive link which has women farm workers list PDF. So this probably, well, I looked at the file, it contained personal information about workers. So first names, surnames, contact numbers, and so on. And in the second example, again, I took a look at the drive links for Google, and I looked for a term called confidential in text. And I got a lot of public Google Drive links which has the term confidential, meaning probably some secret data, some secret information or information that shouldn't be public. And all of this was gathered via non-intrusive methods. So I just Googled. And you also have to understand that Google dorking, there's a public database called the Google Hacking Database, which has all of these dorks already implemented. So you can just copy paste it and use and change it based on how they want, what kind of data you're looking for. Now, how do we solve this? Well, I would like to address this problem in 3 steps. The first step is called data classification. Now, the NIS2 directive already has a sys control point which talks about data classification. So the idea behind data classification is that we take all the data that we produce as a company, as a sector, depends on the scope, and we categorize it based on the CIA things. So based on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So how critical is a certain data point? This can help us identify those pieces of information which are very critical, it shouldn't be shared, and other pieces of information which can be shared or can be public. Now, the second point is, of course, employee training. When it comes to employee training, I would say that the first and most important part is data sharing protocols. So the data sharing protocols are also directly connected to the NIS2 directive in data classification. So if we have some data which is highly confidential, how are we allowed to share this data? Via public drive links, via private drive links, via USB, or how on? Also other employee training, so saying that we cannot use public drive links, what type of data can we publish, where can we publish it, and so on. And the last step is external security audits. Now, these external security audits are comprised out of two parts. The first part is hiring a firm to do a Google check on us. So they try to use Google just to find what type of open data is available. Also use LLMs, so let's say ChatGPT. What can ChatGPT tell us about our own business? And the other part of this is hiring a security audit, which will also check the dark web. So maybe there's not data on the public web, but maybe the dark web has a lot of open data about us. And we need to know about it so we can fix this and also be prepared for any sort of data leakage that can happen. That is from my side. I hope I gave you a small introduction, a small insight into how easy it is to find public data about any sort of company, be it agriculture or personal. And I'll pass the floor to the next speaker.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mai. This was a great reminder that open data can both be a gift and a risk, and that it's really important to have some mitigation strategies to make sure that we use those tools responsibly. So we're a bit behind schedule, but we'll welcome our last speaker before moving on to the discussion. So I will give the floor to Nevena Alexandrova from the FAO, who will be focusing on secure digitalization and how to make it accessible and inclusive for all farmers. Please, Nevena, over to you.
Hello, I hope you can see my slides. Thank you very much for inviting me. I am going to talk about farmer vulnerability, particularly from the Global South perspective. As you can imagine, as FAO has around 200 member states, and most of them are from developing countries. So digitalization is also expanding there, and farmers face unprecedented cybersecurity challenges more and more. And this adds into the global food insecurity issues that they have, and also security in many countries, it adds on the security issues that they face in agriculture, like stealing cows, equipment, etc. So this definitely augments the problem that they have and their vulnerability. I would like to address this topic, however, from an innovative perspective, you may tell, or from a foresight perspective as well, because in our unit, in the Office of Innovation, we work a lot with foresight. We do that because it is a good tool to change perspective. And this is exactly what we need to change the perspective of our stakeholders. And as you can imagine, I have an issue in changing the slides all of a sudden. I hope. Okay. Sorry about it. Okay. Again. All right. So please imagine that a scenario which is very positive, and that by 2050 we have fully sustainable, inclusive, and resilient agri-food systems that drives innovation. We have citizen-led governance and also a lot of open and open source innovations, public-private partnerships, and open access to knowledge that empowers farmers. Secure digital systems also ensure ethical technology uptake, fostering resilient food systems through transparent and participatory approaches. So a lot of participatory approaches, connectivity, and opportunities for open innovation capitalizing on open source activities. So we preferred to look at those scenarios from two lenses. One is the light cybersecurity augmentation lens, and also the negative cybersecurity lens, where we could not ensure cybersecurity. And it's very interesting how this very positive scenario changes as a result of adding or removing the cybersecurity layer. So in the positive scenario, we have a secure data integrity that places farmers at the center of innovation. Blockchain and strengthens the fairness, the just strategies and agri-food systems that also equalizes the power dynamics, basically empowering all farmers, not only big farmers, to be a valuable part of the food chains and the value and to add value. And they also ensure the reliable market access. So in this case, cybersecurity is playing the role of augmenter, the factor that boosts this scenario to be even more perfect than it is. In the other case, we will not be able to achieve the sustainable prosperity for agri-food technologies and innovations because we will not be able to achieve the cybersecurity everywhere, which brings data breaches, ransomware, digital scams that exploit vulnerable smallholder farmers. This leads to erosion of trust in a society, in the community, but also in the agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. So no prosperity, no sustainability can be achieved. We have this other scenario that was equally interesting for European stakeholders, the AI in charge in agri-food systems. This scenario is not necessarily negative as has been perceived by a lot of European stakeholders, because it actually assumes that AI will autonomously managing agri-food systems and will shift the patterns to sustainability or resilience or inclusivity the way it is needed in the particular moment according to the economies, global economy, etc. However, this by default in the scenario would pose some cybersecurity threats. If they are not resolved, we will have a scenario that results in a systemic instability, food insecurity, and loss of trust in AI-driven agri-food systems, rendering the AI management of food as a dangerous liability. However, if we would be able to optimize cybersecurity, this will be a game changer again that would empower again AI to go hand in hand with humans and provide a secure agri-food and innovation systems with responsible innovation, with minimal disruption. And of course, public trust will be maintained and farmers will benefit from this innovation. Why I was sharing these scenarios with you, because in our practice, if you bring a lot, even if you bring a lot of data to policymakers, if you do not attack the core values of a society or a particular group like policymakers, the likelihood of taking action may not be so high. And this is why we innovate in policies for transformation, for agri-food transformation, particularly using such instruments like foresight and behavioral science. So we recently have produced 2 reports on pre-emerging and emerging technologies and innovations, where interesting results have been achieved. For instance, digital technologies and innovations were not so absolute as we thought the experts and stakeholders would suggest. Now they would put as key innovations policy innovations, nature-based innovations, and they would recognize digital innovations such as AI as very powerful to address certain challenges in the agri-food systems. But when we think about the bigger impact on resilience, on inclusivity, on sustainability, then AI comes least. And that was surprising. And this also denotes the huge potential some technologies can play if they are secure, including cyber secure. So we also propose a specific framework in which you can put in practice foresight for analyzing emerging technologies and innovations, connected equipment, data integrity, value chain risks. Also using scenarios to model potential cyber attacks, and also evaluating the impact of cyber attacks on food security, or to also stress test policy options on cyber security before they are made. When we talk about future technologies and innovations, those that are emerging now, it is an interesting observation that we had a changing trend. So the new technologies are required to be efficient, democratic, and sustainable. So this blended approach is needed, and no longer minimization, personalization trends are dominant as they used to be. This is very important when we talk about ensuring access to smallholder farmers, the most vulnerable, but also to all stakeholders. So based on foresight, we were able to sense that there are specific consequences that are or preoccupations that are much more important for smallholders. The first is the financial loss that can be direct economic damage, or it can be also ill damage as a result of cyber attacks or operational disruptions, inability to use essential tools, and also community impact. So this lack of trust that this cybersecurity can create in the communities and between different types of stakeholders of the agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. What we propose policy frameworks that integrate cybersecurity into agricultural digitalization, based on 3 main points: baseline security standards, regulatory guidelines on data ownership, privacy and security, and also public-private partnerships. We use this framework that you see with 3 elements: the policy and governance, foresight and risk assessment, and human factor or behavioral science approaches to address those, let's say, formulate in a participatory way the policy options. So policy and governance relates to proactive legislation, also multilateral governance, where farmers also play a key role, and international cooperation. So I heard earlier this first speakers pointed out on harmonization, and this is exactly why we need international cooperation to have it in the picture. Then I spoke about foresight and then the to anticipate the future threats, and also to identify risk management strategies. And I also very much agree with Professor Bernori to take this approach that includes not only technological assessment, but also environmental and social assessment. And this is also what we do when we talk about human factors, to understand the farmer's behavior prior to design the cybersecurity measures, to promote training and awareness through, for instance, advisory services, and overall building a culture of cybersecurity in rural areas, which is not the case even in countries from the global north. Here there are some examples of innovative policies for smallholder farmers to ensure accessibility, affordability, like shared security infrastructure based on cooperative models where farmers are sharing equipment, security subsidy programs where the government is releasing the financial burden from the most vulnerable farmers through vouchers for security services or tax incentives. And the third is about the security as a service models, where we have subscription-based security solutions tailored to agricultural needs, like mobile-based security monitoring and pay-as-you-grow security packages. And now we have to propose some case studies on successful implementation of security digital solutions in rural communities, like in Kenya, where we have this cooperative model. In Brazil, a model that is based on public-private partnerships that provide secure connectivity and also training for farmers. In India, a secure agri-app ecosystem. Basically, the government is certifying a marketplace of different cyber secure apps. And in Vietnam, a blockchain crop traceability system that is tracking securely the production of some markets. And here's some recommendations. basically to ensure access to collaborate, educate, and implement secure solutions. FAO is a partner of the Digital Public Good Alliances. This is, as you know, a part of the digital public infrastructure, and where digital public infrastructure also has this building blocks elements. Basically, these are capacity development and policies that are made available as an open source for digital public infrastructure, and addressing cybersecurity will be very important to advance in the public digital public goods initiatives. How we do that in FAO, we work a lot on policies, as I said, in participatory manner through an innovation that we have, the Innovation Policy Labs, that integrate foresight, behavioral science, digitalization, innovation, and data science into bringing multilateral, multi-actor, based on multi-actor approaches to identify policy options and implement them together through a science and policy interface. And I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nirvana. So that was a great reminder that equity is not just about access to the digital tools, but also to protection and support, and for all farmers, whether they're small or bigger. So now we're going to move to the discussion, and I will give the floor to Seraphine once again, who will be leading the question and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Merve, and thank you, the speakers. As I promised at the beginning, some of the presentations, well, all the presentations made a bit of sobering thoughts about the risks and the trade-offs that are needed. I will be I have taken prolific notes before bothering, or instead of bothering the speakers with that, I was just checking if there's any questions from the floor. I think that's the time. I've been checking. I don't see any written question in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Merve, but is anybody like to make a question to the speakers before we will have like a number of questions set here? But if anybody like to take the floor, please just raise your hand, and we'll be happy to give you the floor. I'm just checking this. Okay. Well, always the first question is always a difficult one. So maybe let's, just take it for the order of speakers. Maybe a question for Angelica. That was a great presentation, and as I say, it made for some sobering thought about that. And I would just my question. I think it's quite right what you say, that no one is too small to be affected. So in reality, I have two questions, because many things what you said, which is complemented with the other presentations about the needs of new standards and new procedures. I myself are working a lot in new policy, and my fear is that some of the solutions implicitly, because they increase the transactional cost, the adaptation costs, red tape as well, regulatory cost, so there is a risk for that to implicitly favor farm concentration, even accelerating trends that we see in Europe at the moment and elsewhere in the US as well. So that's perhaps a question whether it is inevitable, or there are ways of preventing that from actually these new measures that we need to put in place would actually favor only the bigger and more prepared agribusiness. But secondly to that, you mentioned about the regulatory misalignment, so to speak, between the US and EU law, and you made a call for harmonization. My question would be, where will be, based on your expertise, will be the right locus to do that, be that between bilateral agreements between, in this case, the US or EU, or global agreements like, ISO standards or agreements in the framework of the United Nations. Because, I mean, that's considering what's going on at the moment, this is not like a minor issue when we're talking something as structural as this. So maybe we can start with that and then we go take a few questions. Angelica.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. Yeah, absolutely. You definitely raise some interesting points regarding this particular field. And yeah, I think harmonization is the priority right now, and not only in agriculture, even in other fields. But with agriculture, we are seeing this growing field, which is not mature enough at the moment to have enough regulations to harmonize, for example, or even best practices. So it's very important to start now from the beginning, since we can see this as an advantage rather than a disadvantage of a negative aspect. So it would be great, yeah, to have these global agreements, as you mentioned, between the US and Europe, for example, but even across other fields. But it's very important to keep the unicity of the regional unicity, and also to keep into consideration the unique aspects of this field, which may not be the same in some countries, and to also learn from other fields, for example, the safety regulations, or even the current regulations that are emerging, and learn from them to try to harmonize in advance what's coming in the future, and try to direct this wave of threats, and also this new regulatory fever that is coming, to make it more targeted and addressed, to cover the existing gaps, and also to make companies more aware of what's happening. And I was very impressed with the presentation, for example, by Nevena, when she mentioned the culture of cybersecurity, which is something that is not addressed enough, even in the cybersecurity field itself. And I think it's very important to make companies aware of what culture of cybersecurity is, and why we need to be aware of certain threats. And I think that the human error is the most the common threats in every field, and in agriculture is very important as well. So I think at the policy level is also important to address and cover in the future regulations. Hope it answer your questions. And
yes, and yeah, I mean, in the current global situation, calling for regulatory dialogue before people just do things that could be compatible, and regulatory rules that could be compatible, and they are not, just because they were developed separately. That's a very clear call. I just saw a question from the audience, which is a bit long. So essentially, maybe that's a question open to anybody, but perhaps for May, because it's about some of the case studies about how easy it is, how scary it is, how easy it is to get public data concerning personal data using open source intelligence. And there's a question from Katarzyna, who specifically asks about what are the most common sources of these ransomware attacks in terms of the origin. I mean, you mentioned some countries, but I don't want to contextualize it there. Just say that maybe Maya, you can actually provide a bit of a background. What are the sort of more common sources of and types of such cyber attacks? Certainly in the examples you cited earlier. Maybe we can just try to frame the question, narrow down the question to that point. Maybe Nevena as well, you mentioned some example as well, so you might also like to chip in if you make. So maybe May first.
So when it comes to ransomware, I think the majority of times when it comes to ransomware, it's state-sponsored. Or I wouldn't say really state-sponsored, but usually interest groups from certain countries are the ones that usually do a coordinated attack. But since all of these ransomware viruses and worms are publicly available, since they're usually posted on GitHub, so you can download the source code, you can compile the virus, and you can use it yourself. So at the same time, everybody can be the source of a ransomware virus, but mostly it's interest groups that want to cause chaos. And also, ransomware has become a business model. So you attack an individual or a business. You, let's say, charge them 200 euros, 1,000 euros based on how much data they have. They encrypt your drive, you pay the 1,000 euros, they unencrypt it. So it's purely a business model. So it's not only in the domain of interest groups. So individuals, people who consider this a business, started doing ransomware. That's how I would answer that.
Yeah, well, that's not what I was expecting. So it's even more worrying. So I thought it would be just criminal guns, but you're actually highlighting something even far more serious. Maybe Nevena, you'd like to comment on from your side. Otherwise, just have a couple of questions for you, but you want to respond to follow up on that as well, given that you gave a couple of examples.
I will not be able to respond to the question whether where the cyber attacks come.
But I will be then slightly angle that question in a different way, which is it was very interesting the modeling framework or foresight modeling framework you highlighted or you presented. I think from the presentation that the audience is dual, is both a top down and bottom up. I mean, there's not just specifically aim as to the governments, for instance. There's also thought about in terms of the end beneficiaries at fund level, for instance. But I mean, is this model being already implemented in some countries as a policy, or is just something that is being developed and is sort of ready to use? I think it's interesting because for instance, in the European Union, we have now at the moment a new strategy to combat disinformation in rural areas. And that will be interesting to know whether the model you are providing that's being used already in practice as a national policy in some particular cases, or is just, as I think maybe is the case, that is something that some people is actually made use of as it is, I suppose, an open source framework. Maybe you can comment a bit further about the practical application of your framework.
Yeah, thank you. This framework has been emerging from our observations from different projects that we implement, but also other agencies are implementing, and also based on the foresight exercises that we've been applying in different policy contexts. And interestingly, the cybersecurity is a layer that should be present always when we talk about digital tools, especially when we talk about new policies, policies that are transformative for digital agriculture. And this is not yet the case. So it is also a challenge to convince governments of developing countries where they have conflicting budgets that should struggle with food security and add a layer of cybersecurity. So this is to say that we do have examples, but working in the field is and to contextualize cybersecurity layers is even more challenging. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I refrain to make a supplementary question, which is whether there has been any cost modeling for the foresight, but as you are suggesting, it's so contextualized that a global framework cannot get into that level of detail, just providing the sort of a standard for that foresight to be carried out. So maybe, thank you. So maybe we can move on to perhaps to Gianluca, Professor Brunori, our coordinator, I mean, to try to elaborate further about, based on the actual Codex research, what do you think are the more pressing issues and risks about agriculture and cybersecurity? And I think most particularly thinking about small scale, because we saw discussed earlier, bigger companies, they even like John Deere is doing, some schemes and so on, but it's more that smaller scale and that social element that is so key of Codex. And what could be like the recommendations, that major recommendations coming from Codex to help make more resilient farms or agriculture from the point of view of small and medium-sized farms. Thank you.
Thank you, Serafin. I think that the most urgent risk we are running, but I'm, let's say, to a certain extent, I am considering especially situations where the level of digitalization is relatively low. The cybersecurity problem will affect a lot the burden of agriculture and farmers on compliance. Given that for farmers, one of the biggest burdens is administration, paperwork, or let's say digital work related to data management, I think that this risks to be another burden on farmers, and this will limit a lot the attitude and the positive approach towards digitalization. So I think that on this regard, we have to consider really strategies if we still want to have digitalization diffused and sustainable, we have to consider collective, let's say, organization around this issue. For this reason, I think that digital ecosystems are of key importance. And I think, for example, collective institutions like a cooperative can really help a lot in relieving farmers of a lot of burdens related to these aspects. We have to consider that agriculture is not isolated, is connected with, let's say, with the input sector and with the processing and retailing sector. So we will have to consider a shared responsibility across the supply chain and across the system. And of course, also at territorial level, we will need to raise some risk assessment about this.
Thank you, Gianluca. Indeed, I mean, cybersecurity as a service is also being pointed out by other speakers, and also the value chain approach is something that, I mean, that's very relevant because that's some of the things that we are certainly European Union level considering at the moment as CAP is being performed. I would just quickly give the chance to speak to partners, to attendees, to make a final question before winding up. I just checking. If that's not the case, I don't know if colleagues, speakers, sorry, will be keen to have any final word. Otherwise, we just go to the closure of the event. So, if anybody would like to any pressing thoughts or issue that maybe thought that was not sufficiently highlighted during your contributions, happy to give you a minute or so to provide some final comment. Anyone? Okay, well, that means that probably means that I think we go for some of us at least very soon for the lunchtime here in Brussels with a bit of the stomach shrunk a bit, because definitely it's quite concerning what we hear, but also there's so many things we have to do in terms of a local level, but also at the national and certainly regional level, at European level, and globally to address this issue before it's getting even worse. I'd like to thank the speakers, and I'll give the floor to to Merveille to do some final reflections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Serafin, and thank you to all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and for your experience and perspectives with us today. So before we wrap up, I would just like to remind you that this event is organized in the framework of the Codex Knowledge Accelerator, as all the other events that we've organized so far. So as a refresher, the Knowledge Accelerator is a platform that is designed to facilitate knowledge exchange and collaboration between stakeholders. And the goal is to ensure that we all have access to the latest insights, tools, and strategies to tackle challenges in the digitalization of agriculture. So we really invite you to register to the Knowledge Accelerator community. We will include a link in the chat in case you're not registered yet. So then you will be able to follow all the work that we're doing and to ensure a sustainable future for digital agriculture. So stay tuned already for the next event that we'll organize, which will be a science policy interface meeting to take place in June. We will announce the date in the coming months, and it will be a workshop that will focus on policy environments for digitalization of agriculture. In the meantime, please note that we'll also be sharing highlight reports on all the really interesting presentations that were shared today. And of course, all the presentations and the recording will also be shared on the Codex website.